The story begins on a gloomy, overcast day at a high school where the rain falls steadily against the pavement. Focuses on the feet of students walking, emphasizing the mundane rhythm of daily life. Usato Ken, an ordinary student with dark blue hair, observes two of his classmates from a distance. He notes internally that some people seem born to be in the spotlight. He watches Inukami Suzune, the beautiful and charismatic student council president with long black hair, and Ryusen Kazuki, the handsome and capable vice president with reddish-brown hair. Usato acknowledges their status as a power couple within the school hierarchy, admitting to himself that they look good together, almost like royalty compared to his own existence as a background character. Usato defines himself as a random high school kid, distinct from the elite aura of the council members. Later, outside on the school grounds, Usato stands atop a ladder in the rain. He is tending to a bird's nest tucked into a high corner of the building, sheltering the chicks from the downpour. He speaks to the birds, jokingly telling them to grow up strong so they can pay him back someday. The scene shifts to the school shoe lockers as the day ends. The rain is still pouring heavily. Usato discovers that his umbrella is missing from the rack. He sighs, realizing someone must have taken it by mistake. He briefly contemplates taking someone else's vase, but immediately dismisses the idea as wrong and likely to result in bad karma. Resigned, he decides to wait out the rain. While he waits, he is startled by a voice and jumps. It is Suzune Inukami. She asks if something is wrong. Usato, flustered by the presence of the school idol, notices she is holding a handle of an umbrella. She offers her own umbrellas as she feels a responsibility to help. He tries to deny it, but Kazuki approaches them. He assesses the situation and, displaying his characteristic kindness, offers to lend Usato his spare umbrella. Usato is surprised that the popular vice president even knows his name. Kazuki explains simply that they are classmates. Usato is struck by Kazuki's genuine niceness, realizing his popularity stems from his personality, not just his looks. They decide to walk home together. As they leave the school, they navigate the wet streets. Kazuki asks what to call him, and they settle on Usato, establishing a friendly rapport. As they walk, Usato comments on Kazuki's friendliness, admitting he expected him to be more distant since he rarely speaks to other guys. Kazuki explains that he simply responds to those who approach him, and it happens to be mostly girls. Suzune teases him about this, but Kazuki counters by suggesting Suzune is even more intimidating. Suzune denies this, claiming to be an average high school senior, but Kazuki lists her accolades. First in every subject, a talented athlete, and beautiful. Suzune elbows him, annoyed at being called out. The conversation shifts to rumors that Suzune and Kazuki are dating. The two stop and casually deny it, explaining they are just friends and just work together a lot. Suzune adds that she never bothered to correct the rumors because she didn't care what people thought, but she's surprised he said it so directly, as no has asked them before. Usato thought it was rude and apologized, but she's fine with it, as this proves he won't whisper about it behind their backs. The atmosphere becomes more contemplative as they walk through the darkening residential streets. Suzune asks Usato about his plans after graduation. Usato admits he hasn't decided yet. This is when Kazuki mentions that this is the same question she asked him the other day, believing she's cutting it close as a third-year student. Suzune reveals that she feels aimless as well. She achieves her goals so easily that they feel meaningless. She confesses that she sometimes feels she doesn't belong in this world, wishing she'd been born in a different reality where things were more challenging. Usato connects with her feeling of not belonging, even if he can't relate to her excessive competence. Suddenly, the sound of bells begins to chime. Suzune hears it first and stops, looking around in confusion. As they stand on the pavement, a massive, glowing gold magic circle erupts beneath their feet. Usato panics, wondering if they are on a film set, while Suzune's eyes light up with recognition. She realizes this is a summoning to another world. She is ecstatic, while Kazuki tries to make sense of the situation logically. A pillar of light engulfs them, shooting into the sky, leaving behind only their falling umbrellas on the empty street. The three students awaken on a red carpet in a grand cathedral-like hall. They are disoriented. They look up to see a king seated on a throne, flanked by armored guards and a woman in purple robes. Usato sits up, confused, and immediately questions their location. Suzune, realizing her wish has come true, struggles to contain a wide, delighted grin, making Usato worried for her, asking why is she so happy. The king, Lloyd Vulgus Linger, welcomes them to the kingdom of Linger. Kazuki remains on business asking questions. Angry and protective, demands an explanation for their abduction. The guards shout at him to show respect, but the king waves them down, acknowledging the students' right to be upset. He explains that they have been summoned as heroes to save the kingdom from the demon lord. While Kazuki is outraged by this violation of their consent, Suzune is visibly vibrating with excitement, her otaku dreams coming true. The king details the history. 2 years ago, the demon lord invaded, pushing humanity to the brink. Though they repelled the attack, their forces are depleted, and they resorted to the forbidden summoning ritual in desperation. Kazuki argues that they have families and lives back home, and demands to be returned. The king solemnly reveals that the ritual is a one-way trip. They cannot send them back immediately. The knights, not liking his tone, are ready with their weapons. Kazuki is furious, but Usato steps in to calm him down, suggesting that fighting right now won't help. The king then walks up and does the unthinkable and bows. He promises to dedicate the kingdom's resources to finding a way home, but in the meantime, he begs for their help. Suzune, regaining her composure, asks the king a pertinent question. Why is he so sure they are heroes when he knows nothing about them? The woman in purple robes, introduced as the mage Welsi, steps forward. She explains that the summoning circle only targets exceptional individuals capable of wielding great power. The bells Suzune heard were the signal of their compatibility. Usato realizes with a jolt that he did not hear the bells, implying he is not a hero but merely a bystander caught in the spell's radius. In a different room, Welsi produces a large crystal ball to measure their magical affinity. Suzune steps up first, barely containing her glee. Kazuki is looking at Usato, asking if he's okay about this, as the guy is too chill about being snatched here and being forced to fight when he's not even a hero. But bro is too chill about it. Usato just wants to make the best of it, gaining Kazuki's respect. She places her hand on the sphere, and it glows with a brilliant yellow light. Welsi announces that this signifies a natural affinity for thunder magic and a massive mana reserve. Suzune strikes a pose, thrilled with the edgy nature of her power. Next is Kazuki. He places his hand on the ball, and it shines with a pure, blinding white light. Welsi gasps, identifying it as light magic, an incredibly rare and powerful affinity capable of dispelling evil. She declares his power indispensable for the coming war. Usato freaks out by how excited Suzune is, and she tells him to stop judging her, but admits she likes this attitude in him. This utterly ruins the super cool class president image he had of her. Finally, it is Usato's turn. He approaches the ball nervously, aware that he is likely just a normal human. He touches the surface. The crystal ball fills with a soft, vibrant green light. The heroes think it's beautiful, thinking it's good, but Welsi goes pale. Then she grabs Usato and runs out the room to take to the throne room. The onlookers gasp. Welsi and the king exchange horrified looks. The king stammers, asking if it is truly green. Welsi confirms it. Usato, confused by their terrified reaction, asks what horrible magic he possesses. The king, sweating profusely, suddenly changes his demeanor. He declares that Usato must be hidden away immediately for his own safety. Before they can explain, the heavy wooden doors of the chamber are thrown open. A tall woman with long, wild green hair and a white uniform strides in. She wears an eye patch over her right eye and exudes an overwhelming, predatory intensity. This is Rose. The king and Welsi freeze in terror. The king tries to act casual, asking why she isn't on her day off. Rose scoffs, stating she never takes days off during a crisis. She walks up to Usato, ignoring the others, and stares him down. She asks if he is the hero. Usato, trembling on the floor. The king tries to intervene, claiming Usato is just a normal boy caught in the summoning by mistake. Rose leans in, her singular eye boring into Usato. She asks his name. He stammers out, Usato. She introduces herself as Rose, captain of the Linger Kingdom's rescue team. Usato forces a smile, terrified by the irony of a rescue captain looking so dangerous, Welsi nervously trying to usher Rose away. Usato, still confused, asks again what the green light meant. However, Rose stops. Suddenly, Rose spins around, her demeanor shifting from suspicious to manic. She realizes the truth. The soldiers scream as she unleashes a burst of energy. She lunges past the king and Welsi. Usato watches in horror as she charges at him. The king screams for someone to save Usato. Welsi tries to cast a protective barrier, but Rose shatters it with a single punch. Usato screams as they fall. Rose effortlessly catches him and lands unharmed in the castle courtyard. She stands up, a maniacal grin on her face, and declares that she has finally found a subordinate. The king and his guards watch from the balcony, devastated. The king weeps, trying to convince her that Usato is an innocent bystander. Welsi apologizes to Usato's friends, trying not to get them to worry too much about him as the kingdom knows where he is. He's with the rescue team. Later, the scene shifts to a darker, more rustic setting within the city. Usato sits at a wooden table in a mess hall, looking utterly unconcerned and still chill. He is surrounded by 5 burly, tough-looking men wearing yellow shirts. They introduce themselves aggressively as Tong, Mill, Alec, Gomel, and Gerd. They shout their greetings in unison, their faces contorted in what they think are smiles but look more like threats. Usato is paralyzed with fear, convinced he is about to be sacrificed or beaten. Rose, standing at the head of the table, observes the interaction. She kicks one of the men in the face, sending him flying. She scolds them, telling them to cut it out and not to scare the newbie. The men immediately apologize, claiming they were just trying to be nice and introduce themselves. Usato is baffled by their definition of nice. Rose clarifies the situation to Usato. She explains that the green light signified healing magic. It is a rare affinity, and there are currently 2 other members missing away at the moment. Therefore, she has recruited him to the rescue team. She tells him that his training begins tomorrow and that she plans to burn the techniques of healing magic into his brain and body. Usato asks if he can transfer to another unit, but Rose ignores him. As Rose leaves, she instructs the men to take care of him. That night, Usato lies in a simple bed in the barracks. The moonlight streams through the window, nestled within a lush green landscape, dominated by a large white castle at its center. The camera pans down to a solitary building on a grassy hill on the outskirts of the town. Inside, Ken Usato wakes up in a simple wooden room. He sits on the edge of his bed, momentarily hoping that the events of the previous day were merely a vivid dream. However, the snoring of a large, muscular man in the adjacent bed and the unfamiliar surroundings confirm his reality. He has indeed been transported to another world. The door to the room opens, and a man with a bandana and a scarred face, Tong, peers in. He is cooking and informs Usato that he has finally rejoined the living and that guests have arrived to see him. Usato enters the main hall of the building to find his friends, Kazuki and Inukami. They express immense relief at seeing him, admitting they were worried after hearing he had essentially been abducted by the head of the rescue team. Usato tries to downplay the situation, scratching his head and assuring them that while things aren't ideal, he is physically unharmed. He puts on a brave face, joking that his training from hell begins that day. Before Usato can elaborate, the intimidating figure of Rose, the leader of the rescue team, appears behind him. She looms over him, her presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. She sarcastically asks if he has finished his little chat with his friends. Usato, terrified, snaps to attention and confirms that he has. Rose clarifies that he is not a prisoner and is free to socialize, provided he is not in the middle of training. She then tosses a blue notebook at him. It is a journal intended for him to record his daily training, track his progress, and vent his feelings. She orders him to prepare for the day, signaling the true beginning of his ordeal. After breakfast, the training begins in the yard. Rose instructs Usato to focus on the sensation of mana. Usato closes his eyes and places his hands over his chest, successfully identifying a warm sensation at his core. Rose explains that this is mana and instructs him to try to draw it out of his body. When Usato asks how to do that, she vaguely tells him he will figure it out eventually and hands him a thick, leather-bound book. She orders him to read it. Usato is initially confused, admitting that he cannot read the language of this world. However, upon opening the book, he discovers that the text is perfectly legible to him. Rose casually mentions that summoned heroes typically receive translation magic upon arrival, a fact she neglected to mention earlier. The book details the geography of the world. Rose points out the Linger Kingdom and the neighboring demon territory. She explains the strategic reality. Because they share a border, the Linger Kingdom is always the first target during a demon invasion. She commands him to study the book to learn about the various races and monsters of this world. Usato, looking at illustrations of bears and monsters, feels a false sense of security, thinking that if the training involves reading, it might be manageable. Day 2 begins, and Usato's optimism is shattered. The training consists entirely of running. He runs across open fields under Rose's supervision. By day 3, the physical toll is immense. Usato collapses on a hillside, his muscles screaming in agony, claiming his legs have turned to jelly. Rose approaches him, menacingly stating that she does not recall authorizing a break. Her hand glows with a vibrant green light as she strikes Usato. At first, he feels pain, then healing magic floods his body. The fatigue and soreness vanish instantly. Usato is horrified to realize the true nature of the training from hell. Rose can instantly heal his muscle fibers, removing the physical limitations of exhaustion and allowing him to train continuously without rest. She orders him to resume running, calling him garbage. Usato realizes he cannot escape this cycle. On day 4, Usato runs alongside the other members of the rescue team, Tong, Mill, Alec, Gomel, and Gerd. They run in formation, mocking Usato for his slowness and warning him that he will miss lunch if he falls behind. Rose watches from a fence, shouting insults and calling him a bug. Usato, fueled by frustration, internally vows to write scathing things about her in his journal as he forces himself to keep moving. The montage continues through day 5, with Usato running into the sunset. On day 6, it is raining heavily. Usato slips on the muddy terrain and tumbles down a slope. Lying in the mud, he feels his body giving out. Rose looms over him, calling him a cold-hearted wretch. A green light manifests around his palm. He stares at it in shock, realizing he has subconsciously activated healing magic on himself. Rose watches silently, noting his progress. By day 7, the physical abuse escalates. While Usato runs, Rose physically kicks him, sending him flying through the air. He screams in terror, convinced she is trying to kill him. He scrambles up and continues running, terrified that she might have read his journal entries where he insulted her. On day 8, the kicks continue. On day 9, Usato collapses again, his body broken. He activates his healing magic, placing his hands on his sore backside. The green light envelops him, and he realizes that the magic doesn't just heal the specific injury, but revitalizes his entire body. He begrudgingly admits that healing magic is essential for surviving this regimen. Day 10 arrives. Usato can now manifest healing magic on demand. He runs with renewed vigor, realizing that as long as he has mana, he will not tire. However, a sense of existential dread sets in. He questions whether running endlessly will actually help him protect Kazuki and Inukami. Rose, sensing his wandering mind, yells at him to pick up the pace and adds 30 more laps to his routine. Usato internally decides he's done calling her Miss or even Rose, instead thinking up a more creative nickname for this drill sergeant. On day 11, Rose adds push-ups to the routine. Usato struggles through hundreds of reps as the sun sets, his arms trembling. Rose asks if he understands the purpose of training his body so intensely. She explains her philosophy. On the battlefield, a healer must be able to outrun the enemy to survive, and more importantly, outrun death to reach injured allies. Speed is the critical factor in saving lives. Usato absorbs this, realizing the logic behind the torture. He accepts that the faster he runs, the more people he can save. By day 12, Usato's body has transformed. He runs effortlessly and performs push-ups late into the night, noting that his body feels lighter and stronger. Rose notices his adaptation and on day 13 introduces a weighted vest. Usato struggles under the new burden but continues to persevere. Day 14 brings a pivotal moment in the mess hall. Usato sits at a table, exhausted and hungry. He turns away for a moment to get water, and when he returns, his lunch is gone. He asks the other squad members if they have seen it. Gomul, the large bald man, picks his teeth and casually admits to eating it because it looked like Usato didn't want it. In the past, Usato might have been passive, but the training has changed him. He snaps. Slamming his hand on the table, he yells at Gomul. Gomul mocks him, calling him a newbie. Usato lunges across the table, grabbing Gomul by the shirt and initiating a brawl. This marks the moment Usato stops being a victim and fully integrates into the aggressive culture of the rescue team. A week later, on day 21, the perspective shifts to Kazuki, Inukami, and Princess Celia walking through the woods toward the training grounds. They have come to pay Usato a surprise visit. As they approach a clearing, they witness a shocking sight. Usato is doing push-ups with a massive slab of concrete on his back, sweat pouring down his face. Rose sits atop the stone, adding her own weight to the burden. While doing so, Usato and Rose bicker constantly. Rose enjoys the back and forth, pleased that he is finally biting back, so she adds another block of concrete, remarking that he's starting to look like a man. Usato's friends can't believe that this is their friend. Suzune, in particular, finds his new muscles unexpectedly attractive. The visitors are horrified. Commander Siglis, a high-ranking knight accompanying them, steps forward and demands to know what Rose is doing. He accuses her of destroying a young man with a bright future. Rose dismisses him, telling Old Man Siglis to unhand her. She sarcastically praises his knightly morals but asserts that she does things her own way. She declares that Usato is going to be her right-hand man, and that if he can't handle this much, then he is useless to her. Usato, overhearing this from beneath the stone, is shocked by the title right-hand man. Rose grins maniacally, praising Usato's stubbornness and hatred of losing, calling his tenacity adorable. Siglis is appalled, but Rose orders Usato to take a break and go get lunch with his friends. Usato throws the massive stone off his back with a shout, the impact shaking the ground. But looking strong, the scene shifts to the group walking along a forest path. Rose and Siglis walk ahead, bickering. Siglis, disgusted by Rose's methods, they find a quiet spot on a grassy hill and settle down for a picnic. Princess Celia introduces herself formally as Celia Volgast Linger, the king's daughter. Usato panics, realizing he is in the presence of royalty, and immediately prostrates himself, apologizing for his casual behavior. Celia laughs gently and tells him to relax, saying she prefers him to be himself. They eat apple pie while Suzune and Kazuki talk about their own training. Their lessons in magic and swordplay are far less brutal and progress at a slower pace, but they're enjoying it as everyone around them is actively trying to help them succeed. Inukami can't help herself. She becomes fixated on Usato's physique and asks for a quick peek. Before he can stop her, she lifts his shirt, revealing distinct, rock-hard abs. She stares with starry eyes, drooling slightly over his muscles. Kazuki tries to restrain her, mortified. Usato sighs, realizing that despite everything that's changed, his friends are still the same eccentric people he's always known. Princess Celia tries to cover her eyes, her face bright red, but still peeks through her fingers. Kazuki says something genuinely thoughtful, showing how deeply concerned he has been for Usato. Usato apologizes for making them worry. Kazuki tells him not to apologize, insisting that none of this was his fault. Usato finally opens up. He admits that in the beginning he wanted to run away every single day. He felt trapped and terrified, but now he says he doesn't want to run anymore. Rose is frightening, but he has grown accustomed to the fear. He has even started to find a strange enjoyment in the challenge. Kazuki and Inukami are stunned by his resilience. Usato looks at his hand, faintly glowing with green mana, and explains his motivation. He knows that Kazuki and Inukami are destined to fight as heroes. He wants to be strong enough to stand on the battlefield beside them, to be capable of helping when that time comes. He doesn't want to be a liability. Touched, Inukami teases him, asking if she can count on him to save her if she gets into trouble. Usato deadpans, telling her to drop the normal girl act because he knows her true personality far too well. Inukami pouts in shock, and even the princess admits she doesn't think Suzune is normal. The group bursts into genuine laughter, the tension completely dissipating. Suddenly, Gomul appears on the hill, holding a boxed lunch. He calls out to Usato, saying he brought him a replacement meal to make up for the one he stole earlier. Acting magnanimous, he tells Usato to let bygones be bygones. Usato's expression darkens instantly, and tells Gomul to stop acting like he's doing him a favor when he was the thief to begin with. Gomul taunts him, calling him a blockhead and a child for holding a grudge. Usato refuses to accept the apology and challenges Gomul to a fight. Gomel grins, baring his teeth, and accepts, promising to beat Usato senseless since the boss isn't around. Usato charges forward and in a flash, delivers a powerful, precise punch straight into Gomel's face. Kazuki, Inukami, and Celia watch in stunned silence as Usato and Gomel descend into a cartoonishly violent brawl, kicking and punching each other while rolling down the hill. Kazuki nervously suggests they should intervene, then hesitates. Usato seems to be holding his own. Inukami agrees, noting that Usato looks like he belongs here now. He has found his place in this world, perhaps even more naturally than they have. She remarks that he's living as his true self. Kazuki agrees, though he admits he feels a bit restless seeing how far Usato has come. He decides it's time for them to return to the castle and resume their own training. That evening, Usato soaks in an outdoor wooden tub at the rescue team headquarters, reflecting on the day. Seeing his friends was revitalizing, though Inukami's obsession with his muscles was deeply unsettling. He thinks about what Rose said regarding his role and looks down at his own body, acknowledging how much it has changed. He is faster and stronger now. He understands the mechanism. Repeatedly healing muscle damage has resulted in superhuman growth. He recalls Rose's words about needing to run fast enough to save the injured on the battlefield. He wonders whether he truly possesses the mental fortitude to face the realities of war, whether his mind has hardened enough to match his body. He clenches his fist beneath the water, uncertain of his inner resolve. The next morning, Usato sits in the mess hall, preparing to eat breakfast. Rose enters and abruptly announces that they're heading out. Usato grabs his backpack, ready for another day of running, but the other squad members exchange uneasy looks. Tong mutters that it's finally time. Rose leads Usato toward the city's main gate. As they approach, the gate guards, including a soldier named Thomas, turn pale with visible terror at the sight of her. Thomas stammers out a greeting. Rose casually replies that she's taking her subordinate to see the outside world. The guards hurriedly throw open the massive gates, eager to get Rose as far away from them as possible. Usato notes her fearsome reputation, but is more curious about what she means by the outside world. They leave the city and enter the open countryside. The land stretches wide and untamed. Eventually, they reach a towering cliff overlooking a vast, dense forest that stretches all the way to a distant mountain range. Standing at the cliff's edge, Rose introduces the location as the Darkness of Linger, a forest infamous for being overrun with dangerous monsters. Usato swallows nervously. Rose crosses her arms and gives her instructions. He is not allowed to return until he has hunted down a grand grizzly. Usato panics, throwing his hands up in protest. He cites the information he learned from the book she made him read. A grand grizzly, he explains, is the evolved form of a blue grizzly, a transformation that only occurs after the creature has lived for at least 100 years. Even a standard blue grizzly is incredibly dangerous, and a grand grizzly is far beyond the capabilities of a novice. Rose ignores his logic. She simply states that with his current abilities, he should be able to take one down quite easily. Usato yells that he absolutely cannot, pointing out a critical flaw in her plan. She has trained him to run, but she has never taught him how to fight. Without warning, she grabs the back of his shirt and his belt and lifts him effortlessly over her head. Usato flails, instantly realizing what is about to happen. Rose ignores his pleas and hurls him off the cliff. The episode ends with Usato plummeting toward the monster-infested forest below, screaming in terror as Rose watches dispassionately from the cliff's edge, her hair blowing in the wind. As he plummets toward the canopy, Usato screams in terror, his mind racing with panicked thoughts of his impending demise. A brief, comical newspaper-style graphic flashes on screen, declaring his death at the hands of his own rescue team captain. However, amidst his freefall, a survival instinct born from his previous hellish training kicks in. He remembers his healing magic. Just before impact, he envelops his body in a green aura of healing magic, bracing himself. He crashes through the treetops and smashes into the ground, creating a massive crater. The healing magic acts as a cushion, absorbing the lethal force of the impact. After a moment of relief, he gathers himself, acknowledging that the only way out is to complete Rose's absurd mission. A newfound determination, fueled by a desire to prove his terrifying captain wrong, settles in. He resolves to hunt the grand grizzly she demanded. His confidence, however, proves to be short-lived. A colossal white grand grizzly emerges from the bushes behind him with a guttural roar. Usato's bravado instantly evaporates, replaced by sheer panic, and he bolts, screaming in terror as the massive beast gives chase. The ensuing pursuit is a desperate struggle for survival. Usato runs for his life through the dense woods, the grand grizzly crashing through trees and foliage right behind him. He flashes back to the torturous training regimens Rose had put him through. Endless running with weighted vests, dodging her relentless physical attacks, and pushing his body to its absolute limits. Despite his enhanced speed, he is shocked to find that the grand grizzly is easily keeping pace. His brief moment of hope is crushed again when he discovers he is not being chased by one bear, but a pack. In a final, desperate gamble, he leaps from a high cliff, diving headfirst into the rushing water below. The bears watch from the clifftop as he disappears into the churning cascade, and after a moment they turn and leave. Usato survives the fall and washes up downstream. Soaked and exhausted, he finds a sheltered spot by a tree as dusk settles. He removes his wet clothes, hanging them on a branch to dry, and takes stock of his supplies. He finds that his backpack contains only basic rations and a hunting knife, lamenting Rose's failure to provide him with any fire-starting tools. He eats some of the hard bread and dried meat, his frustration with his captain palpable. Before settling down to rest, he uses his knife to carve a single tally mark into the tree. As night falls, a patch of leaves on the ground glows with a faint green light as his body heals from the day's trials. The next morning, Usato prepares to resume his mission. As he navigates the forest, he encounters a small, unfamiliar creature, a black rabbit with long ears, bright red eyes, and a peculiar, curly, prehensile tail. Usato's innate kindness and his role as a healer take over. He kneels down and gently places his hand over the rabbit's injured leg. The wound closes instantly. Grateful, the rabbit begins to follow him. Usato tries to shoo it away, concerned that it will be in danger if it stays with him, but to his surprise, the rabbit seems to understand his mission and begins to lead him purposefully through the forest. It guides him to a clearing where he finds the grand grizzly's den. Inside, the white bear and two blue cubs are sleeping peacefully. Usato is astonished by the rabbit's intelligence and its apparent desire to help him. For the next several days, Usato and the rabbit observe the bears from a safe distance. He learns their routines, their feeding habits, and their family dynamic, and he begins to feel conflicted about his mission to kill it. Throughout these days, Usato suffers from stomach problems caused by drinking river water without boiling it, but his healing magic gradually begins to passively heal him. On the fifth day, their stakeout is violently interrupted. Both Usato and the rabbit sense an overwhelmingly powerful and malevolent presence approaching. A gargantuan white snake, an enormous creature of terrifying power, slithers into the clearing. Usato is terrified, but luckily the snake does not notice them. He continues to watch the bears and decides that, despite his guilt after observing their peaceful family life, he will soon be ready to hunt the bear. Without provocation, the snake suddenly launches a brutal attack on the sleeping bears. It mercilessly slaughters the entire family, leaving their bloody bodies strewn across the entrance of the den. Usato watches in frozen horror as the creature kills for sport rather than food. Just as the snake departs, the sole survivor of the attack, one of the blue grizzly cubs, emerges from behind a pile of rocks. It whimpers and nudges the lifeless bodies of its parents and sibling, crying out in grief. Seeing the cub's sorrow, Usato's mission changes. He is no longer hunting a grand grizzly to pass a test. He is now determined to avenge the slain family and protect the orphaned cub. Usato prepares for the fight of his life, eating large amounts of carbohydrates and drinking water. Using his knife, he cuts down a tree and carves a spear as his weapon. He and the rabbit then scout for the snake. When they arrive, the grizzly cub is already fighting the giant snake. It is clearly losing, but its eyes show unwavering determination. Usato recognizes those same eyes in Rose. Usato charges at the snake, but nearly gets his head severed. He quickly changes tactics, spearing it in the eye, but is violently smacked away. Realizing brute force will not work, Usato decides to keep moving and attack from its blind spot. The snake is incredibly fast and powerful, managing to bite Usato's knife hand. It feels as if the snake had set him up, but Usato powers through the pain and stabs it in the mouth, forcing it to release him. However, venomous saliva splashes around the bite, and Usato is struck by the poison. The venom immediately begins to course through his body, causing intense pain. He recalls another one of Rose's lessons. He realizes that internal ailments like poison must be healed from the inside out. Usato charges back into the fight, but is nearly struck again. At that moment, the blue grizzly cub joins the fray, blocking the snake's tail swing and protecting him. Usato and the cub fight together. Seizing the opportunity, Usato runs up the snake's massive body toward its head. He punches its hardened scales and then drives his spear into its eye, seemingly overcoming the deadliest beast in the jungle. Exhausted and barely able to stand, Usato is nudged by the cub in celebration. However, the snake manages to rise once more, glaring at them with its single remaining eye filled with hatred. Usato panics as the cub tries to pull him away. He has no stamina left. In what he believes may be his final moments, he thinks of his friends and curses Rose for being a gorilla lady. At that critical moment, Captain Rose makes a dramatic entrance, appearing as if from nowhere. She stomps down on the snake's head with a thunderous impact, crushing it instantly. Usato is utterly confused about how she got there, and she explains that she has been keeping tabs on him the entire time, through her pet, Kukuru the rabbit, who looks smug after tricking Usato all along. Rose calmly explains that the snake was a monster conjured by the Demon Lord's army during a past war, a remnant left behind that even the kingdom's hero, Sigurd, failed to completely destroy. She admits that it would take an army of 100 soldiers to face the monster, and even then, only a few might survive. She reveals that her original plan was for Usato to learn survival by being hunted by the Grand Grizzly, but the snake's appearance created a new, more valuable lesson: how to face an overwhelmingly superior opponent. Usato is aghast at her callousness and at the realization that she was willing to let him face such a terrifying creature alone. The blue grizzly immediately begins to growl at Rose, believing her to be a threat, clearly showing how much it cares for Usato. Usato understands that the cub is all alone and scared. Because of this, Rose allows him to keep the grizzly as a familiar. The grizzly carries Usato on its back, while Rose carries the grizzly, making them both feel small in comparison. Just as Usato starts to relax, Rose asks him when he found the time to come up with new insulting nicknames for her, like Ogre or Battle Gorilla. She gives him a creepy smile and tells him he is not getting any sleep tonight. Usato has no idea what she means by that. As they watch the sunset together, Rose admits that she is proud of him. This experience proves that he can stand beside her on the battlefield. He will still undergo much harsher training, but he has shown that he has the guts and the mental fortitude to endure it. She reveals that there were two healers before him, but in the end, neither of them possessed what it took to stay by her side. They now live different lives in the capital. Finally, Rose informs Usato that they will be going to war soon. The episode begins with a flashback to a conversation between Rose and Usato in the forest. Against the backdrop of a vibrant sunset, Rose informs Usato that a conflict is imminent. She predicts that the demon army will launch an attack very soon. She explains the strategy. The Kingdom of Linger's forces will fight desperately to hold the defensive line, and Usato's role will be to plunge into the thick of that chaos to heal the wounded. Crucially, she specifies that he will be doing this alongside her at the vanguard. Usato, sitting on the ground with his rabbit companion and the blue grizzly cub, is incredulous. He questions whether he is truly expected to be on the front lines. When he asks about the other healers, specifically Tong, Rose clarifies that the other two healers will remain in the rear, adhering to their assigned roles. Usato expresses deep self-doubt, admitting to Rose that while he understands her words, he does not believe he possesses the capability to perform such a feat. Rose, walking away, simply tells him that he has a little time left to put those doubts to rest. Inside his imposing castle, the Demon Lord sits upon his throne, receiving a report from Amila, the commander of the Third Army. Amila kneels and informs her liege that preparations for the invasion of Linger are complete, and her forces are in position to begin the assault. She confidently asserts that Linger will fall this time. The Demon Lord, exuding an aura of menacing calm, reminds her that his forces are hers to command, but warns her not to allow the enemy to snatch victory away as they did in the past. He demands that she dedicate everything short of her own life to this endeavor. Amila bows her head, promising to do so without fail. As Amila exits the throne room and walks down a torchlit corridor, she is visibly shaken, wiping sweat from her brow. She is intercepted by a white-haired demon named Hiraluk, the army's researcher and doctor. Hiraluk mocks her, noting that she fears their master more than the enemy and accusing her of enjoying needling her colleagues more than actually working. Amila retorts by questioning his work ethic. Hiraluk, unbothered, invites her to see his latest creation. In Hiraluk's laboratory, he unveils a massive, green-tinted tank containing a serpentine aquatic monster. He introduces it as Demon-Made Monster Prototype 72, boasting of its enormous body, dagger-like fangs, and potent venom. Amila recalls that Prototype 71 bore the same name and went missing during the last invasion. Hiraluk admits that the previous model fled after being wounded by the human warrior Siglis, but insists this new iteration is far superior. Amila remains cautious, noting that Linger possesses its own secret weapons, specifically the rumored kidnappers. She explains that while these individuals do not fight demon soldiers directly, they undermine the war effort by snatching injured humans from the battlefield and spiriting them away to safety, effectively negating casualties. She describes their leader, a woman who roams the front lines and restores allies from the brink of death, as perhaps the most dangerous of them all. That woman is Rose. Amila adds that Rose holds a deep grudge against the Demon Lord. Hiraluk suggests that their commander should not be on the front lines, but Amila reveals she has chosen a champion to fight in her stead, the Black Knight, a terrifying armored figure shown standing amidst a dark army, its red glow piercing the shadows. Back in the human realm, Usato wakes up in the barracks, relishing the comfort of a real bed despite Tong's loud snoring. He greets the blue grizzly cub, who is sleeping on the floor. Usato produces some green fruit he gathered from the mess hall for the bear's breakfast. As the bear happily devours the fruit, Usato's rabbit companion appears from behind the bear, looking indignant. The rabbit demands food, and despite Usato trying to resist the creature's cute begging, he eventually caves and gives the rabbit a fruit as well. Rose enters the room and inquires about the bear. Usato reveals that he has named the bear Blue Rin, combining the color of his fur with a cute suffix. Rose accepts the name with mild disinterest and informs Usato that she has spoken with King Lloyd. Blue Rin is allowed to stay as property of the rescue team, but with one condition: the bear must work. Rose orders Usato to saddle Blue Rin with a harness filled with heavy weights. However, instead of running alongside the bear, Rose instructs Usato to carry the weighed-down Blue Rin on his back. She frames this as a battlefield simulation. Blue Rin represents a heavily wounded soldier who is bleeding out and needs immediate extraction. The training begins. Usato struggles under the immense weight of the bear and harness as they jog through the countryside. He initially thinks it isn't that bad, reasoning that it's similar to his previous training. Rose dislikes his relaxed attitude and shouts at him to pick up the pace, reinforcing the scenario by reminding him that his patient is dying. As they run, one member of the rescue team suddenly tries to punch him. Another immediately follows by attempting to tackle him. Usato yells at them, demanding to know what they're doing. They respond bluntly that this is part of his training. On the battlefield, the enemy is trying to kill you. They pass Tong and Mill, who are sprinting wildly. Soon after, they have to dodge a wooden stick. Later, they are bombarded by green, foul-smelling slime dropped from a tree by Gomul, who proudly claims it is his original stinkwater recipe. Usato realizes the entire team is insane. Hours pass, and Usato's stamina drains rapidly. He eventually collapses on a grassy hill, unable to continue. Rose approaches and places her hand on his head using healing magic to revitalize him instantly. Usato questions why he failed so quickly. Rose explains that this is the limit of his endurance in a combat scenario. The psychological burden adds weight to the physical one. She tells him he must develop the mental fortitude to push through that fear. Usato jogs into the castle town, carrying the massive blue bear. He expects panic, but the townspeople react with calm recognition, identifying him by his rescue team uniform. A grocer remarks that while a blue grizzly is dangerous, the rescue team is known for its eccentricities, so a man carrying a bear is just another day to them. Usato realizes the team's reputation borders on notoriety, appearing like brigands, yet fully accepted by the populace. Usato apologizes for having no money, but she insists it is a treat. Blue-Rin gently accepts the fruit, and the woman is instantly charmed. As Usato walks through the streets, eating the fruit, a man in a white comes around a corner. The man chases after him, calling out, "Sir Usato," but Usato doesn't notice at all. The man is soft-spoken and unable to keep up with Usato's pace. Catching his breath, the man introduces himself as Orga Floor, a healer who runs a clinic in town with his sister. Orga explains that he is technically Usato's junior in the context of the rescue team, though Usato was summoned alongside the heroes. He expresses admiration for Usato's ability to survive Rose's training, admitting that he and his sister washed out of the program quickly. Orga explains that he lacks the ability to heal himself, which severely limits his effectiveness in combat. He also explains why healers are typically stationed in the rear, to preserve their lives so they can continue saving those pulled out of danger. However, he acknowledges that if Rose has ordered Usato to the vanguard, then she truly believes in his capability. Orga asks Usato not to hate Rose, describing her not as cruel, but simply socially awkward. With that, they part ways, as each has things to attend to, Orga worrying that his sister is going to nag him. Orga's sister, Ururu, soon arrives and immediately scolds him for wandering off, fretting that he might die from something as simple as a walk. She is a blonde woman in a red dress and is extremely overprotective. Orga hints that he has met an interesting person, but Ururu drags him away before the conversation can continue. Usato proceeds to the castle gates. The guards, recognizing him as Sir Usato of the rescue team, allow him and the bear to pass without issue, citing Rose's assurance that the bear is safe. Usato is impressed by how much authority Rose's word carries. Inside the courtyard, he watches soldiers sparring until Suzune approaches him. Delighted to see Usato, she immediately becomes fixated on Blue-Rin, specifically wanting to touch the bear's paw pads. Usato introduces Blue-Rin. Suzune attempts to pet the bear, but Blue-Rin snaps at her, sensing something tainted about her soul, much to Usato's amusement. Suzune awkwardly plays it off, claiming the bear is just shy. Usato notices that Suzune's hand is blistered and bruised from sword training. He gently takes her hand and heals it instantly, removing even the faint bite marks left by the bear. Suzune is amazed by his skill and blushes, teasing that he came all this way just to see her. Usato quickly corrects her, saying he also came to see Kazuki, causing Suzune to sweat at his blunt honesty. The conversation turns to Kazuki. Usato notes that he isn't around, and Suzune explains that Kazuki has gone into the wilderness with Commander Siglis for monster combat training. The scene briefly cuts to a forest clearing where Kazuki, Asise, and several knights are facing down a pack of red wolves. As they confront the red-haired wolves, Kazuki, determined but sweating, steels himself for battle, promising victory. Back at the castle fountain, Usato expresses his worry for Kazuki. Suzune maintains a cheerful facade, saying she will take her turn in the wilds once Kazuki returns. Usato points out that while Kazuki openly shows concern, Suzune hides her feelings behind snark and humor, but he worries about both of them equally. Suzune blushes, caught off guard by his honesty. Usato picks up Blue-Rin and departs to continue his training, leaving behind a thoughtful Suzune. As Usato walks through the town at sunset carrying the sleeping bear, he reflects on his situation. He thinks about Kazuki facing monsters in the wilderness, and Suzune pushing herself to the limit with sword training. That night, Usato finds Rose standing on the porch of the rescue team headquarters, gazing at the moon. He approaches her to report on his training. He admits that he is still unable to fight in the traditional sense and has no desire to kill. However, he declares that he has found a motivation stronger than his fear. He tells Rose that his role is to save the lives of his allies. He asserts that he will protect them even if it means throwing himself in front of an enemy blade or facing death. He vows to save Kazuki, Suzune, and anyone else within his reach, stating that this is the very job she trained him for. Rose smiles, a genuine yet fierce expression. She steps forward and punches him firmly in the chest, acknowledging his resolve. She tells him to say it loud and proud, and to show the world what it means to be a member of the rescue team. Usato smiles, finally feeling like he truly belongs. From a nearby window, the other members of the rescue team, Tong, Mill, and the rest, watch the exchange, snickering and giving thumbs up, proud of their newest recruit. The episode transitions to the next morning. Usato is sleeping soundly in his bed when the door suddenly bursts open. Rose stands in the doorway, demanding that he wake up immediately. She informs a groggy and confused Usato that they received a request from the king the previous day. Usato is to depart at once to join Hero Suzune for her training expedition outside the castle. Still tired and disoriented, Usato realizes he has been assigned to escort Suzune into the wilderness, just as he was beginning to settle into his routine. Usato is carrying the sleeping giant blue bear companion, Blurrin, who is sleeping. He questions why he has been deployed on a training mission alongside Inukami. He recalls that Inukami mentioned Kazuki accompanied Siglis on a previous mission and wonders why the knights weren't sufficient this time. Rose, walking ahead with her signature imposing stride, explains that the kingdom specifically requested Usato act as an escort for Inukami and Kazuki. Rose initially refusing for Kazuki on the grounds that Usato was still recovering from his own hellish training, the king persisted with a second petition. Suzune, looking vibrant and excited, expresses her delight that the trip has improved significantly. She admits she hadn't realized Usato would be joining them and is ecstatic to see he brought Blurrin. She gushes over the bear, declaring him an adorable animal companion, and notes that her party now includes a healer. Suzune, seemingly ignoring the warning, laments that the bear seems indifferent to her desires. Usato is confused by her phrasing, but Suzune quickly brushes it off to introduce the new members of their party. She presents Aruku, a knight with red hair, and Korin, a mage clad in blue and white robes. Usato returns the pleasantries, expressing relief that they are in good hands. He then pauses, realizing he recognizes Aruku. The knight confirms Usato's suspicion, reminding him that he was posted at the front gate when Usato first arrived in this world. Rose interrupts the reunion to deliver a stern briefing looking at Suzune. She emphasizes that while Usato's healing magic is potent, capable of curing poisons and mending injuries, it has hard limits. He cannot resurrect the dead. She warns the group not to become careless simply because a healer is present. Suzune acknowledges the order seriously. Rose adds that since Suzune trained under Siglis, she expects them to be fine unless the situation becomes dire. With a final silent glare that sends a shiver down Usato's spine, reminding him there's nothing left for her to say, Rose departs. Usato is left bewildered by her silent intimidation, while Suzune remarks on how powerful his mentor is. The perspective moves briefly to a flashback or concurrent scene within the castle grounds. Kazuki is seen practicing heavy sword swings, his breath ragged and sweat pouring down his face. Princess Celia approaches him, deeply concerned. She questions what he thinks he is doing. Kazuki, trying to mask his fatigue, claims he is merely practicing. The princess points out that he only just returned from grueling combat training the day prior and urges him to rest. Kazuki insists he slept well and is fine, but his trembling limbs suggest otherwise. Celia presses him, warning against overexertion. Kazuki, flexing his arm to show his strength, though the princess begs him to take care of himself, blushing as she's protective of him. Kazuki smiles, knowing she cares for him. Back on the road, the group walks toward the mountains. Usato comments on how hard Kazuki's training must have been, noting the hero's exhaustion. Suzune confirms this, mentioning that Kazuki was fighting monsters on the plains outside a massive forest known as the Darkness of Linger, which happens to be their destination. As they walk, Usato carries Blurrin on his back, the bear fast asleep and blowing a snot bubble. Suzune, walking behind them, looks at the sleeping bear with intense longing. She asks Usato if Blurrin is a heavy sleeper, thinking maybe she might be able to pet the bear without waking him. Usato is horrified by her intensity. Just as she reaches out to touch the bear's fur, Usato slaps her hand away. She's confused and tries again and again and again. Suzune clutches her hand and demands to know why not, though her tone suggests she enjoyed the rejection. Usato looks at her with a mix of confusion and concern, wondering what is wrong with her. Suzune spins the narrative, accusing him of being the type of guy to slap a girl's hand away. Usato ignores her theatrics and addresses the bear, suggesting that since Blurrin is awake, he should walk on his own. Blurrin grumbles but complies, landing on the ground with a heavy thud. Suzune immediately offers to carry the bear if he is still tired, spreading her arms wide. Usato tries to intervene, advising against it. Blurrin, sensing an opportunity, leaps at Suzune. The impact is heavy, crushing Suzune under his weight. Rather than being in pain, Suzune revels in the warmth and fluffiness of the bear, describing the sensation of being crushed as a blue flood. Usato and the others look on, exasperated by her eccentric behavior. Suddenly, Korin stops, her staff glowing blue. She announces she has detected multiple creatures ahead. From the bushes, a group of ragged men emerges. They announce that their plan to surround the group has succeeded. The men are armed with crude blades and appear to be bandits. Their leader, a bald man with a tattoo on his head, gloats about capturing a mage and a royal knight, demanding they hand over their valuables. Usato looks at them with flat eyes, unimpressed by their lack of intimidation factor. Suzune, however, is thrilled. She points excitedly, exclaiming that they are experiencing a random encounter with actual bandits. Usato notes her strange enthusiasm while the bandits look scared by the presence of a blue grizzly bear. The bandits, trying to regain control of the situation, discuss the value of the bear's pelt. Usato's expression darkens instantly. Before he can act, she furiously echoes Usato's sentiment. How dare you? She unleashes a burst of lightning magic. The spell connects, sending the bandits flying and twitching to the ground. Usato watches, terrified but impressed, noting that she didn't kill them. Suzune preens, claiming she has been practicing her control. Usato gives her a thumbs up, joking that he can heal them if she accidentally hurts them too badly. The remaining bandits, seeing their comrades down, decide to rush the group, believing the mage can't cast at close range. As a large bandit lunges, Usato steps in. He mimics a Pokemon trainer with his hand and shouts for Suzune to use Thunder now. Suzune doesn't appreciate it. He continues, and she notes he's terrible at complimenting a girl. The lead bandit calls this bullshit. Aruku counters, shouting for the bandits to drop their weapons, demands they surrender. Before the skirmish can continue, Korin detects a new, faster threat approaching. Suddenly, a herd of red-furred creatures, identified as fall boars, bursts from the forest edge. They trample the bandits in their path. Aruku is confused as to why these monsters are so close to the forest's edge. The boars are in a frenzy. One particularly large boar charges toward the group. Blurring gets in front to attack. Suzune is about to be hit by the boar, so Usato jumps in front to block the hit's damage. Usato wraps his arms around Suzune to shield her as they plummet over the edge of a cliff. They fall through the canopy, crashing through branches before hitting a raging river below. The water engulfs them. Usato struggles against the current, keeping a tight grip on Suzune. He spots a waterfall ahead and braces himself. He remembers this place and tells her to take a deep breath. They go over the falls, plummeting into a deep pool below. As his vision clears, he hears Suzune giving a vow to save him, and he makes fun of her, making her blush. He realizes this is the exact location where Rose had thrown him during his initial training. Usato notices a cut on her cheek and offers to heal it. Suzune thanks him, but immediately begins to apologize, blaming herself for getting them separated from the group. Usato cuts her off with a smile, telling her there is nothing to apologize for and expressing relief that they managed to stay together. Suzune realizes her uniform is soaked and transparent. She crosses her arms, embarrassed. Usato, scanning the sky, notes the sun is setting and rain clouds are gathering. He suggests they find shelter rather than trying to navigate the dangerous woods in the dark. He points out a nearby cave that would offer protection from the elements. Suzune, wanting to be useful, goes to the water's edge. She channels her lightning magic into the water, shocking a group of fish to the surface. Back in the cave, Usato gets a fire going. He creates a makeshift drying rack for their clothes. Suzune changes out of her wet uniform, asking Usato not to peek. He promises he won't, sitting with his back to her. Suzune, now in dry clothes, glances at his muscular back, blushing slightly. She comments quietly to herself about him coming prepared with a washboard, referring to his abs. Usato asks what she said, but she quickly dismisses it. The piece is interrupted by a rustling sound. From the darkness of the cave ceiling and the trees outside, several small, lemur-like creatures appear. Suzune's eyes light up and she calls them cute. Usato's face drains of color. He identifies them immediately as venom monkeys. He warns her that while they aren't aggressive, they are highly poisonous. Suzune, enamored by their appearance, ignores the warning and reaches out a finger to one hanging from a stalactite. The monkey licks and lightly bites her finger. Usato screams at her to stop. Suzune turns to him, smiling dreamily, her face flushing purple as the neurotoxin takes immediate effect. She slurs that she feels fine, then collapses into a paralyzed heap, still smiling. He scolds her for her recklessness while working to extract the toxins from her system. It is night. Hirokazuki stands before the king, furious and worried. He demands to know how his friends were allowed to go missing. The king admits that he hesitated to inform Kazuki, but eventually decided he owed him the truth. He explains that a search party is being assembled. Kazuki, unable to wait, declares he will go find them himself. Rose steps out from the shadows, her voice cutting through the tension. She tells Kazuki to slow down. She states firmly that Usato is a member of her team and is not easy to kill. She asserts that as long as Usato is alive, Hiro Suzune will be safe. Her confidence in Usato's survival skills helps to slightly calm the frantic Kazuki. Suzune has recovered from the paralysis, though she looks sheepish. He sits back down by the fire. The atmosphere turns contemplative. Suzune hugs her knees, staring into the flames. She asks Usato how he truly feels about being summoned to this world. He admits it's a hard question to answer. He says part of him wants to go home, but another part wants to stay. Suzune rests her chin on her knees. She whispers that she doesn't want to go back. Usato looks at her, surprised by the admission. She explains that in their old world, she felt trapped by expectations. She was the perfect student, the student council president, burdened by the hopes of her parents and the admiration of her peers. She describes it as an emptiness that achievements could never fill. Here, in this world, she feels truly free for the first time. She says she dreamed of leaving her old life behind. Usato listens intently. He relates to her feelings, admitting that he too wanted a change, sick of being a nobody with a nothing life. He realizes they have more in common than he thought. Suzune smiles at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. He tells her that he used to see her as someone he could only admire from afar. Usato laughs self-deprecatingly, saying he tried to stay out of her and Kazuki's way because he thought that was best. He confesses that he now has a mission to protect her, Kazuki, and the people of this kingdom. Suzune looks at him with genuine warmth. She says she prefers talking to him. The moment becomes intimate and quiet. The next morning, the storm has passed. Usato and Suzune stand at the cave entrance preparing to leave. Usato suddenly tenses, sensing a presence. He warns Suzune to be ready for another monster attack. However, from the bushes bursts Blurring, looking happy and unharmed. Behind the bear, Aruku emerges from the foliage. He sees that both Usato and Suzune are safe. Aruku explains that they set out at daybreak to find them, but the bear took off on his own, seemingly picking up their scent. They agree to head back to where they belong, to the kingdom they have both decided to protect. In the kingdom of Linger, following their harrowing ordeal in the forest, Usato and Suzune are summoned to the throne room to report to King Lloyd. The king greets them warmly, expressing his relief at their safe return. Usato, flustered and far less accustomed to royal etiquette, frantically waves his hands to refuse the apology. The king seems to buy the excuse and changes the subject, inquiring about the progress of Usato's training with the rescue team. The question triggers a traumatic flashback for Usato, who begins to sweat as he pictures Rose's brutal regimen. He glances to the side and sees Rose standing stoically with another official. Trying to give a confident but vague answer, Usato nervously laughs and suggests that the results of his training speak for themselves. The king smiles, accepting this answer. However, Usato catches a subtle, knowing smirk on Rose's face. He is struck with a moment of internal panic, convinced that Rose orchestrated the entire dangerous field training exercise as a way to prove the effectiveness of her inhuman methods. Concluding the audience, the king dismisses Usato and Suzune, allowing them a day to recuperate, but requests that Rose and the knight commander, Siglis, remain behind. Usato and Suzune walk through the castle's ornate hallways. Usato is visibly troubled, prompting Suzune to ask what's on his mind. Their conversation is cut short by the arrival of a frantic Kazuki and a concerned Princess Celia, who have run to find them. Kazuki is breathless with relief, explaining that he had been told they were missing after a monster attack and had spent the night fearing they had been devoured. Suzune playfully teases him for his excessive worry, while Usato lightheartedly brings up a past embarrassing incident involving Kazuki and a monkey. Suzune quickly covers Usato's mouth to silence him before he can elaborate, leaving a confused Kazuki to wonder what they're talking about. Later, the four relax in an outdoor courtyard near a fountain. Kazuki recounts how Captain Rose had to physically restrain him from charging into the forest to search for them. Hearing this, Usato feels a complicated mixture of pride in Rose's confidence and dread at what that confidence implies for his future training. He places a reassuring hand on Kazuki's shoulder. Princess Celia observes them, remarking on the beautiful and close bond they share, a connection forged from being the only people from their world. This observation makes Kazuki pensive. Taking the opportunity, the princess shyly asks if he would be comfortable dropping her formal title and simply calling her Celia, to which a flustered Kazuki agrees. Meanwhile, back in the throne room, the serious discussion continues. Sergio reports that the captured bandits confirmed a disturbing trend. Beasts from both the grasslands and the forest are fleeing their natural habitats, migrating en masse towards the kingdom. The king correctly deduces this can only mean one thing: the Demon Lord's army is on the move again. Siglis agrees, grimly noting that after their defeat 2 years prior, The demons will not underestimate Linger's forces this time. The king turns to Rose with a new mission, to scout the enemy's position. He also asks her if she will once again lead the kingdom's army into battle. Rose refuses, stating that the king still vastly overestimates her abilities. She becomes visibly emotional, her hand drifting towards the scar over her eye as she recalls the past. She confesses that the death of her previous squad was her fault, a result of her own pride and conceit. The memory of their loss, she explains, is what drove her to create the rescue team, a unit dedicated to saving lives rather than taking them. She then reveals her ultimate goal, to train a subordinate who can never die. She identifies Usato as the perfect candidate for this role, citing his unique resilience and adaptability. Having made her point, she formally accepts the scouting mission. That evening, Usato returns to the rescue team barracks to find a note from Rose. Attached is a sealed letter and a meticulously hand-drawn map. The note instructs him to take the next day off from his usual training to run an errand, delivering the letter to an address in town. The following day, Usato wanders through the bustling marketplace, trying to decipher Rose's surprisingly detailed map. He soon notices that many of the townspeople are staring at him with curiosity. He realizes it's because he is without blurring, the blue grizzly that has become his constant companion. He stops at a fruit stall and chats with the elderly vendor. He eventually finds the address on the map, which leads him to a small clinic. A cheerful young woman with blonde and pink hair, Ururu Fleur, greets him. Recognizing his uniform, she correctly identifies him as the rescue team's newest member. After a playful series of failed guesses at his name, she learns he is Usato. She introduces herself and explains that her older brother, Orga, is a former member of the rescue team and that they run the clinic together. Their conversation is interrupted by a man bursting in, desperately calling for the doctor. Orga, a calm man with long blonde hair tied back, emerges. The man explains that a ladder fell from a roof, injuring his friend and two passersby. Orga immediately agrees to help and instructs a surprised Usato to accompany him. They arrive at the scene to find 3 people lying injured on the cobblestones. Orga quickly triages the patients and directs Usato to treat the man with a severe bleeding gash on his leg. Usato freezes for a moment, the sight of a real, life-threatening injury, far more visceral than anything he has faced in training. He recalls Kazuki's words about Rose's faith in him and Orga's earlier advice to focus on the patient. He takes a deep breath, kneels, and places his hands over the wound. Afterward, outside the clinic, Orga and Ururu thank Usato for his invaluable assistance. Orga extends an open invitation for Usato to help at the clinic whenever he has free time. The conversation turns to Rose, and Ururu remarks that Rose used to be far more fanatical about training when she first founded the rescue team. This revelation shocks Usato, who can't imagine her being any more intense. Orga explains that he left the team due to concerns for his sister's well-being under Rose's harsh methods. He then opens the letter Usato delivered. It is an official notice from the king, sealed with the royal crest, informing him that the Demon Lord's army has been sighted near the kingdom's borders and that all forces are to prepare for war. Who recognizes him and notes Blurren's absence. Usato buys a bag of Blurren's favorite fruit, promising to return later. As he continues on his way, a small blonde girl with cat-like ears suddenly grabs his arm. Her bright blue eyes are fixed on him with an unnerving intensity. She speaks cryptically, telling him that only he can see it, and that only he has the power to change the future. One of her eyes flashes a fiery red, and Usato is immediately assaulted by a terrifying, grainy vision. Scenes of brutal warfare, the bloodied and defeated bodies of soldiers, including what appear to be Kazukizuki and Suzune, and the menacing silhouette of a towering black knight. He gasps, snapping back to reality, just as the mysterious girl clutches her head in apparent pain and flees into the crowd. Deeply unsettled, Usato is left standing alone, clutching his bag of fruit. The scene shifts to a dark and stormy night in a remote ravine. Members of the Demon Army's Third Corps, identifiable by their horns, are constructing a massive wooden bridge. Their commander, a formidable woman with red hair and dark armor named Armia, oversees the work. Standing beside her is the imposing Black Knight from Usato's vision. Their progress is abruptly halted when an entire tree, thrown with incredible force from the opposing cliff, smashes into the bridge, destroying it, and sending the demon soldiers plunging into the raging river below. Armia stares in disbelief and rage. On the other side of the chasm, Rose stands alone, her white uniform a stark contrast to the storm. A wild, almost manic smile spreads across her face as she prepares for the inevitable confrontation, having single-handedly declared war on the approaching horde.